Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for spending time with me today again on Innerviews, where we meet the people behind the businesses in South Africa. And today I'm very excited to be chatting with Dominique. Dominique, please will you tell us a little bit more about your business and why you started it?
Good morning. I work in collaboration with several other fashion designers. I actually have 3 businesses running. The first is Essential Threads, which was born out of the need of basic essential clothing during the pandemic. We started actually with masks. So that's a little company that I run together with Loren Phillips, who used to have a CMT that I did a lot of work with when I was a full-time fashion designer. I still am a full-time fashion designer. It's just more split up these days. Another of my collaborations is a project with Natalie Maran. It is called Sew You Magazine. And that is a magazine online about sewing tips, tricks, hacks, and other crafting projects. So that's something that keeps us busy as well. And then my third collaboration is a new one. It actually is really just in the seeding phase. And it's a project with Carlo Gibson. We are going to be doing a really high fashion ladieswear collection together.
Oh, that sounds so exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's also challenging, but all the people that I collaborate with are very experienced and bring incredible gifts and talent to what we do. So I'm really all for this collaborative effort at the moment. I'm a mum and I have a little 3-year-old. So I left full-time employment when she was born, fully intending to start up a full-time job again when she was a bit older, but never got to that point. Any mom of a toddler will understand why.
Yes.
So I really enjoy being able to work from home and be there for her. But also I'm passionate about what I do. So it's not so, I have to create, I have to. So if I can work with people who enable me to do that,
yes,
it's brilliant.
Yes. So what I find very interesting is a lot of South African fashion designers are all about building very much a me brand. And it's very interesting to meet a designer who's more focused on collaboration. Why do you feel collaborations are so powerful?
So there's so many aspects to being a fashion designer that there are a lot of sort of celeb designers who are all about the persona and the hype, and I have great admiration for them, but that's not me. I'm a craftsperson, I'm a technical person, and I'm an artist as well. I paint, but I'm quite quiet. I do enjoy the camera, but I'm not going to be the first person announcing that I'm the most important person in the room. And I've worked for fashion designers who have that,
yes.
Who have that ability, and I've always admired it, but it's not me.
Yes.
So yeah,
yes.
I just also appreciate what collaborating with other designers can bring. I don't have the time or the capacity or actually the energy to work a 16-hour day anymore, which I used to. So I'm all about working smarter and not harder. Yeah.
Do you think that South Africans are kind of almost raised in a culture of that kind of working longer and longer hours to make things work?
I don't think it's necessarily just a South African culture. My husband works for an international company, and they're very much also just driven to put in as many waking hours as possible. But I actually think that the nature of work you can focus on other important aspects of your life and still have a successful and important input in work without giving up everything about your life.
Mm, mm, mm. So how do you manage to engineer that for yourself?
Well, so far, I'm not quite there yet. I'm working on it. Working on it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you've still got goals.
Yes, yeah. So it's I'm trying to find that balance.
Okay, okay,
yeah.
Okay. And what do you enjoy most about being a fashion designer in South Africa?
I think that in this country we have just so much opportunity as brands starting out. I've worked overseas. I worked in London for several years. I worked in the Middle East as well. And there, the markets are saturated. You can't just step in with a new brand and suddenly you've got an agent and you're in all the biggest retailers. It's just not going to happen. The brand I worked for in London, I think worked for about 15 years before they finally got anywhere. They're doing well now. But here, yes, we are competing with Asia, obviously, and all the cheap imports. But there is that desire for homemade designer items. So I think there's just opportunity here that we don't even fully realize a lot of the time.
When I often speak to my friends overseas and I hear the hoops they have to jump through to start businesses there, where here in South Africa you can almost just grab any idea and get going with it.
And go, yes, yeah.
So I do think it's a land of opportunity if we can just learn to frame it that way.
Yeah, there is another aspect to that which makes it difficult is that you do often have to build from nothing. So just to pay a seamstress, you've got to think about how you're going to manage, what are you going to do about UIF and how you're going to get the transport and sick leave and all that stuff. It's other learning curves you have to go through. And back to the collaboration thing, that's another reason I like to collaborate with other designers, is because I actually don't like to handle all the admin on my own. It takes away from the time of doing things that I actually enjoy, which is the creative part. So if we can share that burden, I'm all for it.
It sounds like a fantastic strategy. So what do you feel are some of the challenges that the South African clothing industry is facing right now?
Well, obviously we are in a time that no one expected. So I think for me, one of the challenges that I've been thinking about for a very long time, but it's just really starting to become a part of the consciousness of everybody, is just the imports from cheap imports that use labor that is actually not well paid or ethical. People do not realize that that's what's making their cheap clothing affordable. So the big challenge is being able to compete with that. If I'm producing a dress, I am paying the seamstress a living wage, and not just a living wage where she's like desperately scraping for food. She's actually able to send her kid to school and is able to just live in a decent way. And that's actually not what you're getting when you're buying cheap Asian made clothing a lot of the time, and people just are not aware of that. So that's always been a challenge for me, and it's always been something I've wanted to bring awareness to. Yes, you can get a dress for way cheaper than I can make it, but what are you paying for? Who made your clothes? Yeah. So other challenges, I mean, there's so many. But, yeah.
And what would you say to a young designer who's starting out and maybe thinking of going into the field?
Just learn as much as you can. I mean, when I was 20 and I came out of college, I thought I knew so much, but there is actually so much to learn. There's no way that you know everything. But work with other people, learn what you can from them, and but also don't be too scared to start something. I was scared for a very long time to start anything, and now I'm just kind of like, well, I'll start things and see how it goes, because yeah, you can't spend your whole life not trying.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
If I think of the number of projects that I've started that have kind of gone nowhere, but they were still quite an important part of my learning for me.
Yeah, but it all leads to a different path in the end. So you might start out with a project that you think is going to end up being something, and it ends up being something completely different, or just fizzles out, but it kind of opened up your thinking to something else.
So how long have you been self-employed, Dominique?
Since my daughter was born in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. I honestly was unemployed for at least a year.
Okay.
I won't say unemployed. Looking after a baby is busy. But yeah.
Okay. So
Before that
you were in the corporate space?
No, before that, I was a designer for Lunar clothing.
Okay.
Which, I was there for 5 years.
Okay.
Before that, I was actually a fashion lecturer.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I've also worked, I've never actually worked in the corporate space, always in ladieswear.
Okay.
I worked, as I said, in the Middle East. There I did evening wear, this very, very high-end couture technique evening wear.
Yes.
And then in London, I worked in high street fast fashion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've seen the industry from a lot of different angles.
I have, yeah. But I come from a pattern making background. That's always been my strong suit, and often I've been more of a pattern maker than a designer. Okay. But I think that they go together. I don't think you can actually be a good designer without being a good pattern maker first.
Yes, I have to agree.
Yeah.
I have to agree. So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Well, hopefully self-employed and making money. I would really like to provide employment for other people, for seamstresses and craftspeople. I'd really like to see my brands grow. I've also really been enjoying learning the marketing aspect of brands. It's one of the reasons that the magazine that I've been working on has been so interesting, because it's the whole social media aspect and growing your mailing lists and just learning about growing a brand. It's actually more important often than shows and that kind of thing, because that's how you reach your customer on a daily basis.
Do you almost wish you'd known that sooner?
Well, look, I started in the 90s. There was no social media platform then. But I never had time to explore it as much as I am now before, because working when I was working for other companies, they had other people to take care of different aspects of the business. Now I'm kind of dipping my fingers in whatever pie I feel I want to.
That's fun.
Which is also a challenge, because it would be nice to have a team of people, but there's not a team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And tell us more about the online magazine with Natalie, because I have interviewed Natalie, so it will be nice for people who watch that interview to hear your side of it too.
She has several businesses as well. So she asked me to come on board as a partner in So You magazine, so that we can basically provide enough content for it. She was trying to do all the content on her own. So yeah, no, we've just been writing articles for it's early days with the magazine as well. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a hitch. I had a home robbery and had all my computers and laptops stolen. So we had a bit of a break then. But yeah, we're back at it again.
Okay. Okay. And so it's just an online magazine. It doesn't come out in print.
It used to come out in print, and the last time it came out in print, she did it as an annual edition, and we may decide to do that again. But for now, it's just an online magazine, and
Okay.
it has quite an international audience.
Yes, yes, I've seen that. And what sort of articles are in the magazine?
So it's everything from ideas about what to do with waste fabric, crafting projects, also simple things like if your sewing machine is giving you problems, how do you troubleshoot that? Yeah,
I
it's
can use that one.
anything to do with sewing and pattern making, simple pattern making. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a huge need for that out there, actually.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to do more of, obviously because I'm a mum, is doing some more kids wear on the magazine, and just kids fun projects, simple things like how to make a decoration for the nursery, things that are accessible to a mum who's at home. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So
and ways to use up waste fabrics is important to me as well.
Okay, so you're very much on the reuse side of things.
Yeah.
Okay. And why do you think you feel that way?
Well, of course, the ecology is just really important. It's not just important to me, it should be important to everyone. And we just need to start thinking a little bit more about how much waste we produce and what we actually do with the items that we generate. The fashion industry is the second biggest polluter in the world after the petroleum industry, and people don't realize that. You creating all this synthetic plastic fabric, which has micro filaments of plastic that wash off into the ocean. And that stuff exists, it's not going away. So if we can reuse it, great. I'd rather reuse natural fabrics and start with natural fabrics in the first place. But even those come with issues. So it's, that a lot of the chain of production of fabric manufacture is quite kept in the dark from the end user. So you may think, oh, you're doing well by buying a piece of cotton, but you don't realize that that cotton is covered in pesticides and the workers were unfairly treated. But I think the more awareness and the more light is shed on the whole value chain, the whole chain of production, the better off we're going to be.
How do you think we could educate the average human being about that kind of thinking?
It's so difficult to say. I mean, I think that if major retailers took some responsibility, it would just be such a great thing. I know certain retailers do it, but I think even more it's needed. It's all very well and good for a little independent designer to be saying, I want to provide fabric that is ethically sourced and organically grown and is not full of pesticides and doesn't waste water. But I don't have the buying power that a great big chain supplier does. So if I'm buying organic fabric, it's very expensive. It's going to push my cost up even more. If that became the norm, those prices would come down. And I also just think people need to learn about buying better quality and less of it. We don't need as much as we have. We don't need 20 new dresses in a year.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts with us. I appreciate it a lot.
It's a pleasure.
So Dominique, if anybody is looking to get in touch with you online, where can we find you?
You can find So You Magazine, all one word, So You Magazine, on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And essentialthreads.co.za is our is my little children's wear range. At the moment, it's just sun hats and masks. We've got beautiful little shwe sun hats. We are working towards a children's wear collection, but for now, it's just those small items.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. And I will share those links in the description of this video when I post it, so that people who maybe didn't get it can just click straight through from the description.
Great, thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, Dominique. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Nice chatting to you.
Likewise.